I'm really interested in the distribution of species. So where do you find, like in a particular area, which species are found, and why are those species found in that particular area, and like what influences that? Is it the habitat? Is it the vegetation? So I'm interested in all these questions. And in order to conserve them, I also need to communicate what I find. And so science communication forms an integral part of my research.
Ecology includes all of us. And so if the animals and the plants are all thriving well, we as humans get to benefit from it. So they are not in isolation. I think that's the point I want to put out there. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Let's Talk. Again, I am excited to host our guest for this episode, Dr. Kadambari Devarajan. In our previous video, she shared with us her journey in surviving cancer and coming back to what she has always loved to do, which is doing research and having fun with nature as a biologist and an ecologist. So if you haven't watched that video, definitely check out that video. It will be in the bio. In this session, we are going to talk about her research on biodiversity monitoring. And she has been doing this research in India, Zambia, and some other places around the world. So on this note, welcome again, Kadambari.
Thanks for having me again, Emelia. I really enjoyed talking to you about my academic journey in the last episode, and I'm excited about sharing more about my research in this episode.
Great. So for some of our viewers listening, what would you define biodiversity monitoring as? And why do people need to be concerned about biodiversity monitoring?
So biodiversity monitoring is trying to understand where species are, what are they doing, just about all biodiversity, which is essentially wildlife. It can include plants and animals and everything from insects to microbes. It could be any of those. All of that is biological diversity. And and people work on different scales of these, on different taxa at different levels, trying to understand where different species are, what are they doing, when are they active, and just so that's the monitoring part of it. And I'm interested in understanding where species are distributed, particularly mammals, all vertebrates, but especially mammals. And within mammals, for my PhD research, I worked on carnivores, and trying to understand where are they found, why are they where they are, how do different factors influence where they're distributed, how does the presence of one species affect the presence of another. So these are some of the questions I'm interested in, and yeah.
Great. So as an environmental biologist myself, I am always fascinated at research on biodiversity monitoring. And also the rate at which species are getting extinct keeps increasing every year, right? And that is a major problem that ecologists are faced with. Was this part of your motivation for specializing in your field of study?
Yes and no, to your last question, because I've always been interested in this. So I come at it from two different angles. So I come at it as an ecologist. I'm interested in also just purely understanding asking different questions about biodiversity and then trying to just understand it. But also as a conservation biologist, I'm interested in learning, in applying what I've learned through the studying the ecology of the species to conserve them. And like you said, there are a lot of species going extinct. So while I started more as just a general interest in animals, it has, like, when you're studying animals, you have to you just become a conservationist
Yes.
out of necessity because of just the situation, because of climate change. A lot of the global issues around there are affecting species in different ways. And so I have now tried to find out how I can, through my research, help conserve the species I'm studying as well, and the landscapes that I work in. And yeah, so it's a mix of both ecology and conservation.
Beautiful. And we need all of that to get our ecological systems thriving. So both the conservation and the biodiversity, preserving the biodiversity is so much important. So following up on the motivation behind your study, would you like to share with us the questions that your research seek to answer? Some of them, or yeah, so many.
Sure. So like I mentioned before, I'm really interested in the distribution of species. So where do you find, like in a particular area, which species are found? And why are those species found in that particular area? And like what influences that? Is it the habitat? Is it the vegetation? When are these species active? Are they active during the day, during the night, during dawn and dusk? Why are they active only then? Is it because of another species? Is it because of, say, the temperature? Is it because of the day length? Is it to find food? Are they limited by their aspects of their morphology or their anatomy? Is that what's limiting when they're active? So I'm interested in all these questions. And in order to conserve them, I also need to communicate what I find. And so science communication forms an integral part of my research as well, in both trying to communicate my findings and my research in scientific journals and other ways, at conferences and talking to people, but also trying to communicate about science in general, and other fascinating and interesting things that my friends are doing, or anything that I found out while researching something else, through writing in magazines and newspapers and blogs, and talking to people through wonderful podcasts like yours, and yeah, just sharing what I find through my research, and sharing that more widely, so that it can be of some application towards conservation.
Wow, that's so great to hear. So over the years, what would you say have been some of the measures that have been employed to improve biodiversity monitoring? And how has your research also played a role in that? How has your research improved the knowledge on biodiversity monitoring?
So things have changed. Biodiversity monitoring has just grown as a field in the past 10 or 20 years. And I feel like it's just burgeoning and expanding thanks to a lot of technological advances. So for instance, you now have devices like camera traps and audio recording equipment, and drones and things like that to to help facilitate studying some of these species more easily in their natural habitat. So for example, I use camera traps a lot. Camera traps or trail cameras are just these motion triggered cameras that I can set up in different areas to try and understand without disturbing the wildlife, what wildlife exists in a place, like what's happening. You can study their behavior, you can understand like exactly what I described, where they're found, when they're active, what is driving all of those. And so I find with birds, you can now add GPS collars, like I was mentioning in the previous episode. I was talking about cottontail rabbits and GPS loggers, but you can also use those and use satellite data. Like the technology has grown so much. You can use telemetry to understand how they're moving. You can add these GPS loggers to birds to understand their migration patterns. So understanding biodiversity monitoring has just grown in leaps and bounds from the technological angle, but also in order to understand all this data that we're getting from all this technology through the statistical and analytical methods to like data science and things to apply and understand how how to monitor them. So both of those have improved a lot in the past decade, especially. And specific to my research, like I said, I use camera traps a lot. That's one of the many tools that I use. And I use specific statistical methods and computational methods to analyze the data that I collect and try to understand and make sense of these patterns of species distributions and activity. So that's where it's at. For my PhD research, I had focused on carnivore communities, and so I was trying to understand at different scales how carnivore communities are structured. So in a small national park in Zambia, for example, what is the carnivore community there like? And in a much larger scale, or even at global scales at different parks or different more human-dominated areas like cities or urban areas, what carnivores are found. It's surprising that you can find carnivores in urban areas like coyotes in Chicago, leopards in densely populated Bombay, or mountain lions in California, like in San Francisco and other areas. So it's like, how are they adapting to these human interventions that we, like, as humans, we have made a lot of changes to environments. How are animals adapting to those? How are carnivores occurring in different areas? What could be driving that? If traditionally they were in an area but are no longer there, what's influencing that? What are some threats? What are the conservation? What's the conservation status of the different carnivores? Things like that. So I've been. Those were the questions I was tackling for my PhD, and I was primarily focusing on space, on the spatial distribution patterns.
Yes.
And for my postdoctoral research at the University of Rhode Island, I'm trying to understand how they use the 24-hour day period. And not just carnivores, but how all mammals across the world. And
Wow.
so this is a collaborative project, and I have like over 100 collaborators. So a lot of data is rolling in. And so trying to understand how different mammals use the day periods. When are they active? And again, based on camera trap data, why are they active at certain times of day? What is influencing their activity? Could the presence of another species be affecting why this species is active only at this time? Things like that. So basically treating space and time as resources that animals use is what I'm focusing on with respect to monitoring them.
Wow, that's so great. So are there some research gaps in terms of biodiversity monitoring that you would advocate that the science community is able to attend to?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And I feel like every one of us can do our bit for things that matter, to make change happen, for things that we're passionate about. And for instance, community science or citizen science, as it's also known as, is huge now. So we get data in multiple ways. So you have long-running projects like eBird, which is from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and you have like crowdsourcing of analyzing photographs. I think there was, for instance, a project on penguins in Antarctica or something like that, where they had millions of photographs where they sought help from anyone who is interested in trying to identify whether there was a penguin present in a photo or not, or things like that. So there's so much that at different levels there are projects, citizen science projects, to monitor butterflies and mammals, and there are things like insects, and there's so many of them. There's eBird, there's iNaturalist, there's Snapshot Serengeti. There's so many of these. So you can people can become a part of any of these projects as they're interested in. And another way is, for example, even though the technology is growing, a lot of it is also generating a lot of electronic waste. So I think more sustainable ways of using the technology and developing technology that is, for example, more solar powered, or so that we use each camera trap that I use used to have need eight like regular batteries, and they run out, and then I'd have to keep using them. And if I use 30 cameras, that's a lot of batteries that you're cycling through, like several hundred for each array of cameras that I'm using, and things like that. So I'm, as an ecologist and someone who thinks about these constantly, I worry about the amount of waste that we're generating for our science, and so I really hope that there's more research to sort of help minimize and develop minimize such waste and develop more sustainable monitoring methods. And like, we need people from different fields. It's a very interdisciplinary sort of thing. So we need a lot of people who are working on different things to come together and try and develop some of these, and a diverse. I strongly feel that a diversity of voices and ideas need to come together in order to make things better. So. And from a personal level, we can always like minimize, try and minimize the amount of, say, plastic that we're generating in whatever way, like going shopping instead of getting a single-use plastic bag, to carry our own bags, small things that we can do on an everyday basis add up and make a huge difference to conservation and to the world at large. So, yeah.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And thank you for sharing all of that, the ways that people can also fill some of the gaps to help the entire science community, and also to help the system we live in. Ecology includes all of us. And so if the animals and the plants are all thriving well, we as humans get to benefit from it. So they are not in isolation. I think that's the point I want to put out there. The last question before we round up for this session would be, what are some of the research that you are doing right now? And what are some of the things we should expect from you in the near future?
So I've been working on, like I said, I just finished my Ph.D. last year at UMass. And so I was working on several projects. And so I'm trying to convert my chapters from my dissertation into publications, again, communicate what I've done so that it can be of use for the conservation of species. And as part of my postdoc, I've been working on how species use the day period, which again, hopefully will have conservation implications. So that's again another paper that hopefully, or set of papers that come out sometime in the next couple of years. And I hope to continue my science communications, so continue writing. I really enjoy writing about popular science and communicating in thinking of the different ways in which I can communicate to different audiences about different topics in science, and just trying to make science more inclusive and diverse, and trying to, like you were mentioning for the previous question, the science we do influences the world, and the world influences our science. So it's important to be as diverse and inclusive and just yeah. So that's what I would love to continue doing. Continue my research, get some publications out there, see my science being applied for hopefully the benefit of some species and landscapes, if not all. And my Zambia fieldwork for my PhD had been interrupted because of the pandemic. So I'm looking forward to go for my final season, or at least my second season of fieldwork, back to Kasanka National Park in Zambia sometime in the next year. So yeah, hopefully just get back to the field, analyze my data from all the data that's been coming in for my postdoc, and read and write as much as I can, and eat and travel, and just because the world is now opening up again, that there's more to look forward to. Hopefully the worst is behind us. So yeah.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all of this. And if you are watching this video from Zambia or India, kindly put it in the chat, and so that we would get to know. And then if Kadambari makes a trip to Zambia, you could connect with her and see how you can support on the research that she is doing. This has been a wonderful session with you, Kadambari. And to our viewers, we are glad you were able to stay till the end of this session. I hope you enjoyed and also learned a lot about biodiversity monitoring. So we will end here, and the link for the next video would also be posted in the bio. Until then, let's enjoy science together. I remain your host, Emelia.